Pop Culture Pastor.
All right. I like to be informative right here off the top because it strikes me that some people might be listening to this watch-along pod who don't listen to the regular pod. Mm-hmm. And so maybe you're just a fan of Severance. You don't really know who Dave and Cody are. Well, Cody belayed his first cool yaw in middle school, and he can scale walls like a gecko.
I can.
I was like, wait, are we talking about Rickon here? Rickon scales walls like a gecko?
Yes.
The man is an enigma wrapped in a riddle and a mystery.
I need more Rickon.
We all need more Rickon, especially this episode, because, gosh, what we got in Severance Season 2, Episode 7, Chikai Bardo, which sounds like a Star Wars character, is probably the most heavy episode of the series.
Heavy and maybe most visually captivating.
Oh, yeah, we got a lot. We got a lot to talk about. This is heavy. There's a lot of dialogue. So I'm going to apologize in advance to anyone listening to this because I don't know how we go over this episode without just going over a lot of the dialogue.
I hit the high points. That's what I'm about.
The high points.
Which are low points.
This is why Cody does not lead the show. I should say Dan Carroll's here. Dan, how are you? Our local Severance geek.
That's right. Happy to be back.
Yeah, so he was here a couple episodes ago. Now he's back, and we needed him for this episode, so I'm excited. So, yeah, Chikai Bardo. We ended last week with Mark stroking out, falling over.
It didn't look good.
It did not look good. And we start this episode at a nameless college.
I've been to a few nameless colleges in my day.
Yeah. It's very clear that we're back in time because we see Gemma, and she's walking across the commons. And Mark and Gemma are about to have their meet cute, giving blood. The Lumon logo is on the equipment. It's on the form she fills out.
Honestly, the meet up of them reminded me of The Office. Their Valentine's Day episode where Michael Scott finds a glove after donating blood and he's like, I think our blood bags touched. And so I'm like, oh, this episode's going to be full of cute moments. Not so much.
No. If you listen to Pop Culture Pastor, the main stuff, you'll find that most things remind Cody of an episode of The Office. That's a regular occurrence.
It is.
But they're giving blood, and it's very meet cutie, and this is the last time we'll feel meet cutie the whole episode. Because it just, basically what we're getting this entire episode is Mark is on what Ragabi calls a journey. So, first of all, before we even get into this, Dan, is it your perception that we're seeing Gemma's experiences, but Mark is seeing them? Is that how you interpreted that? So is Mark getting all this, and then how?
Right. No, I don't know. My first inclination was that this was he was reliving this and kind of experiencing it over again, kind of almost as any Mark and Mark are coming closer and closer together in their mindset or whatever. He's kind of piecing together things from his past life as well that's more relevant now in his current situation.
Okay. Because I was of the impression the whole time, I'm like, oh, how is he seeing all this? But I could have been reading too much into it.
So I think definitely parts of it are him.
Yeah.
But not the whole episode. Definitely some of this is just Gemma-centric and
Absolutely.
from Gemma's point of view.
It was clearly back in time, though. We noticed that right away because we get a much more jovial and confident Mark.
So one of the things my wife pointed out very early in this season, she's like, oh, they made Adam Scott look rough and old. And then this episode, it's like, hey, he looks like Adam Scott.
Yeah. Yeah, he looked good in that first scene, too. It's like strikingly good. And I'm like a heterosexual man. So, I was like, oh, wow, he looks good here. So we're clearly in a different time with a different Mark. And it was nice to see him happy. He's glowing. He's good. And they have this whole kind of cutesy conversation. They're both professors, which, did we know that? Did I just miss that? Have they given us that information?
You could definitely infer potentially that he was a professor. They did reveal that she taught. But it makes more sense now, his throwaway line about, did you have to tell her students that she was dead, when he's talking with Devin?
Yeah.
And so it makes sense.
Yeah.
But I don't think they outright said it.
So we go from the meet cute memory as we flash to kind of an emotionalist Gemma giving blood. This is clearly in Lumon land. The walls are white. And then we have who I'm going to call Nurse Ratchet for the entire episode.
That's not what I will call her.
Played by Sandra Bernhard, which kind of continues this. She was a comedian.
Yes. Big in the 90s.
Bigger in the 80s. I mean, I would say even sooner than that. A lot of people are going to be like, oh, this is somebody? Like, yeah, she was huge.
Yes.
She was like best friends with Madonna. I mean, she was around.
She was a rough comic,
Yes.
if my memory serves correct.
Very much so. But that was kind of a thing in the 80s and early 90s. too.
Yes.
You had much more rough and explicit comics. But yeah, it was good to see her. I was like, oh, well, she's getting some work.
She's
great.
still alive.
That's usually our refrain here on Pop Culture Pasture. Like, oh, man, they're still alive. That's awesome. Good for them. So she's sitting there. She's giving blood. Nurse Ratchet is there. She's kind of spaced off. And then she comes back and she says, Gemma, where did you go? Which this is not the last time we are going to hear
Something similar.
that specific, kind of question. We move to Mark in his apartment with Devin and Ragabi. And this is obviously where we get, okay, this is the setup for the entire episode. And we kind of talked about, like, I was kind of wondering, are we seeing what Mark's seeing? Ragabi says he's on a journey. And we talked a little bit about that already. Clearly, some of these things he wouldn't be privy to, right? So he's seeing Gemma in Lumon, and that remains to be seen. It'll be interesting to see whether, okay, was he seeing that? Is there something about the reintegration that opens him up to just Lumon general knowledge? I mean, they got a lot of computer things going on. Maybe he is seeing that.
I don't think so.
You don't think so? Not even with the end scene?
No.
Okay. All right, we'll get to all that.
I think that as he's seeing the flashbacks, he's not
for
seeing
sure. The memories. Yeah.
Yes, he's not seeing what Gemma's going through inside the bowels of Lumon.
But that's you just feel that because they don't give it away.
There's no reason he should.
Well, right. I know there's no reason he should. There's a lot of things on this show that happen for no reason.
Yeah, I'm 99% confident.
Okay. Ragabi informs a distraught Devin that her brother is reintegrating and that it's what he wants because she is not for it. Devin argues by saying what he wants is to know his wife is alive, to which Ragabi retorts, she is. This kind of sends Devin buckling at the news, and we get the opening credits, which, of course she would buckle. We get a nice little scene this episode, a fact that we'll talk about later on, about the closeness of Devin. I mean, she talked about it a few episodes back in this season where, hey, it was hard for her too. She liked her sister-in-law. Right. But we get the opening credits, and before we move any farther, we should probably make room for What the Lumon? Cody.
What the Lumon?
What is our What the Lumon moment in this episode?
My What the Lumon moment is when we realize that Gemma has to live out going to the dentist consistently. Like day in, day out.
That is the worst.
And I'm like, no, why are you doing this to her? Why?
You may know where we're going here, but we talked about an awful lot of imagery earlier in the season, and it made a comeback in this episode in a big way.
Poor Gemma.
We're back. with Lumon Gemma after the credits. She's sitting at a cool 97.6 degree temperature Fahrenheit.
Hey, that's where I'm at most of the time.
Yeah, are you cold-blooded?
I do run cold.
You run a little bit cold. I thought it was interesting. They're in perpetual winter. She's at 97.6. I'm going to keep saying 0.6. Everything's colder there. And then she gets asked this question. This was great, by the way, when she's getting checked out. If you were caught in a mudslide, would you be more afraid of suffocating or drowning? And I immediately wanted to say that this question was insane. But then she said drowning, and my mind was like, same! What? What just happened? What'd you think of that question?
I thought it might have answered one of our big questions.
Oh. Kierspiracy!
Cold Harbor, Gemma's going to be living out drowning over and over.
Oh, gosh. That just sounds... Oh, this is getting worse. I hope not. Daniel, what'd you think about that question?
I also thought that it kind of referenced maybe her car crash, maybe, landing in a body of water, drowning.
Oh, man. I hope not. Gemma asks, how many rooms today? And the man says, 6. Or the Nurse Ratched, sorry. 6. That's 2 6s. Just saying. We'll get back to that. There's an outfit. There's an outfit that's clearly for a specific room. We see Gemma react negatively to the outfit. We're about to find out why. Because she already knows what room she's going to. She's led down a hallway by Nurse Ratched with many doors. Every door has a nameplate. Allentown, Cairns, Drainsville, Sienna, Loveland. Finally led to a door. What was the... I wrote down the wrong one.
Wellington,
yeah.
Yes.
I wrote Loveland twice. That's not going to work. It was Wellington. These are all the files Mark has completed in MDR. Did you guys catch that? Mm-hmm. Daniel and Cody shake their head. Nurse Ratched asks if she is ready. The door opens. Gemma walks through, and we get a severed effect. So, holy cow. We get our first character who we realize is not just severed in half. Multiple severed consciousnesses for Gemma. And yeah, this is turning into a nightmare pretty fast. Mm-hmm. And if it wasn't just for that, it does pretty quickly here because it's a dentist's office. Very Lumony, of course.
Yes.
Gemma,
it's the whistling guy.
Yeah. Gemma looks unthrilled to be there, and enter our whistling guy from a couple episodes back. He wheels the equipment out and says, there she is. By the way, this is Robbie Benson, actor Robbie Benson, running Brave. Oh, this is like, 80s guy. I have not seen this guy in a long time. And I was like,
he's alive too.
I was like, is that? Yeah, it is. And he looks super creepy. Just great. Great pick. She says, there she is. And Gemma responds, can I please get a break? And the dude says, but it's been 6 weeks. To which she replies, I was just here. Which again, more proof that she is heavily severed. And let me just make sure we're reading this the way we're supposed to. Do we all agree she's severed multiple times for each of these rooms?
That's the way I took it.
I believe so as well.
That's wild. And it gives her maximum torture. Like, those consciousnesses never know anything but the suffering.
They're stuck.
They are stuck. To her, she was just in that room getting teeth pulled or whatever it is this crazy man is doing. This episode was hard, Dan.
It was so hard.
Y'all, they sent her in this room to get real dental work done. And whatever happened, whatever they are doing, it's pain. She's in pain. And the hell narrative is coming back strong this week. Because what's more hellish, specifically the eternal pain and anguish, than going to the dentist every day for eternity? That sounds awful.
Weeping and gnashing of teeth.
We see as she exits the room, she severs out. She says, how long was I in there? As she grabs the side of her face. To which Nurse Ratched replies, 2 hours. 2-hour dental appointment. That's
some pretty serious work.
Like I got a tooth pulled here last year, and I was in there like an hour, and that went poorly. Like, that did not go smoothly. And so she's in there 2 hours. That's something.
I do have thoughts, but I'll save them for
Yeah.
one of the later rooms.
Yeah, we're gonna leave plenty of, if we can get through this, we'll leave plenty of time to talk. On the way down the hallway, we see a door marked Cold Harbor. Mm-hmm. We see the nameplate for it. And Cody, I have another one. Kierspiracy!
It's happening again.
We got a lot of them. Here's what we know, guys. Let me lay this out for you. The projects MDR are working on, they involve grouping these numbers together, and then they when they make them feel a certain way and putting them in a certain box. Fear, sadness, anxiety. Is Lumon farming people's fears to create their little hell rooms?
So I wondered if what they're doing is testing out these rooms and then having Micro actually retool and refine and upgrade the chips. Because if they've been severing people for 12 years, surely they've upgraded the Severance chip.
Well, and there is some discussion between some of the luminaries, if you will, about the holding of the Severance. And it makes sense that some of our more extreme emotions might be something that they kind of retain the feeling of. Mm-hmm. So they're testing out the pain, the anguish, the anxiety, and seeing how much of it she retains on into her other severed consciousnesses, which...
They do ask her
if
you remember, if you felt anything.
Right. So we get a practical explanation, and I am leaning heavily into the hell imagery, but obviously not in a real, like, biblical, supernatural sort of way. But, man, it's hard not to think of it that way.
I saw someone else mention that this is a possible alleviation of suffering is what Lumon is trying to do by separating, like the pain of childbirth, all these different ways of kind of separating off the pain that they want to create essentially a perfect life.
Well, and that's interesting because I think it's very possible, and I've wondered that, if we may get like the understandable villain by the end of this. Mm-hmm. The like, okay, we see what you were trying to do there, but once you started creating alternate consciousnesses, you just didn't understand that was actually life,
right?
And that you were torturing people. But yeah, I think that's definitely possible. Mark goes to. We go to the past again. Mark goes to what must be Gemma's office. We're moving quickly through their love story. We go from that to them living together, probably post marriage. That all happens in kind of this really interesting, very well shot montage. Like the cinematography this episode was great, but there's herky-jerky camera movements as we're kind of moving through this, and I took that as like they're trying to give us an idea of the passage of time, but it's not smooth,
right?
Which was all very interesting to me. And the question is this meant to portray how Mark is seeing this currently in his kind of addled brain, or do we think they were always in an artificial place? That time was constantly the construct of time was constantly being manipulated, and thus their lives.
So if we go with the first option, I feel Lumon must be kind of like, to use a different American reference, so mine corporations, they had mining towns and they owned everything in those towns, and they wouldn't actually pay out in U.S. money. They'd pay out in like mine coupons.
Lumon dollars. Lumon bucks.
Yeah. Yes. And so like, does Lumon own everything in this community that they're in, or are you correct in that this is all like projected memories and like distorted constructs that are imprinted onto these individuals?
I feel like either of those could be possible. That's a pretty interesting perspective. I hadn't even thought of that, but the mining town that just runs everything. I mean, we've already gotten a lot of proof of that. The place they live in is literally named Kier, which we know is not a real place.
Yep. Haven't been there.
They gave him a coupon for pips.
Oh, yeah. And Pips is owned by
Lumon owns
Lumon.
Pips. Yeah.
So it's sounding more mine-esque.
In the memories, we get a dinner scene with Devin and Rickon where Gemma announces sort of in an indirect way that she is pregnant. It's very sweet the way Devin finds out, and they have like kind of this unspoken moment. And like I said earlier, you get this idea of like, oh, Devin and Gemma were close.
Yeah.
It's not always that way with people and their in-laws, but like you can see this bond they have and how happy Devin is for her in that moment. And it was at that moment of the episode, obviously, that I knew that, oh, this is gonna be rough. Rickon is hilarious in that scene, and I feel like we talked a little bit about it, made fun of it, but he's Rickon, and we needed that, just that brief little comedy, because the light fades and her eyes lose that joy in another wonderful, like, kind of time-lapse-y shot. And did you notice that as that time-lapse shot was happening and the light was fading and her eyes were getting darker, that we hear a dentist drill in the background? Did you guys catch that?
I didn't.
Ugh, just awful. And then we go and we see Gemma in the process of a miscarriage. That's heartbreaking stuff. And
Very much so.
that whole scene is played well. You can see that they haven't, like, they're suffering tragedy, but they haven't been beaten down by it yet, like what we'll see later on in the episode. And I mean, if you have experience with that, or if you've been around people who suffer tragedies, and like where they go is so totally understandable by the time you get farther into this story. Mark is goes to seeing his severed self talk to severed Gemma. We get this weird, like, kind of memory from season 1 when Miss Casey consciousness comes to check on Helly R. And we follow the wires from that, like, we kind of go down into the floor through these wires. And lo and behold, we go into another room in Lumon where we have kind of like this faux MDR team.
Yeah.
This faux Lumon crew that looks a lot like they kind of look like their counterparts. And their job is clearly to hit buttons with numbers while they're observing the MDR guys. And specifically, the ones they kind of look like.
It's like the generic versions of all of them.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. They're like the Great Value brand. So Great Value Mark is watching Mark, and he's punching numbers. And the screen says Drainsville. So this was one of the doors. The labeled doors was Drainsville. And this is apparently where they are. And in the middle of all this, we get Drummond talking to the guy I'm just going to keep calling the dentist until he gives us his name later on. He says, are the severance barriers holding? And this is kind of what we were talking about a little while ago, where they seem to be testing these strong emotions and if they're carrying over across the severed consciousness. Then he also adds, you like her. To which the dentist says, she's easy to like. She's fond of me too, of course. Which I wanted to be like, you sure about that, bro? And Drummond also isn't so sure. He's like, didn't she try and break your fingers?
As one does.
Now, this is important because go back to a memory here. First of all, do you guys have anything you want to add to that scene?
Why are you wearing that hideous sweater?
I think that actually happens later.
It does.
Yeah.
In this moment, he's got some kind of weird beret looking.
Yes.
Yeah, he's clearly the guy in all these rooms with her.
Which makes me wonder if he really is a dentist.
Yeah. I don't think this guy's really a dentist.
He's not on the up and up.
No. We appear to go back into a memory again with Gemma and Mark. It's clearly a doctor's office. But briefly, we see the dentist walk by, which again, what is happening here? They're either heavily observing them or this was never the real world that they were living in. This is wild stuff.
I know some fan theories say that as soon as they became a couple, Lumon became more invested and we're going to follow them through, because no matter what happens within a marriage, there's going to be some rocky moments, there's going to be some up and downs, and there might be a chance to swoop in and Lumon it up.
Well, okay, while we're going there, is Lumon responsible for her infertility?
That's also a good question.
Because clearly, if they're doing what they're doing, they would need people who are going through suffering.
And it's all about control, I feel like, for them too. So they would want to make sure that they can control people within their population or whatever.
While she's in the doctor's office, we revert back to Lumon, and just kind of like some of the flashbacks we saw last week. Gemma's in a room, in that waiting room, which just happens to have the same dimensions as the waiting room she's currently in Lumon. Like, same room. So more clues that, and more questions about whether the real life is an illusion or what. We get more of that herky-jerky montage. We see the elevator. We end up back in a memory with Gemma doing in vitro. I believe that's what that was, right?
Yeah.
With the shots. Mm-hmm. The audience, by this point, you don't even need to be told that it's not going to work. Like, you just know that that's coming. Then the interview with the dentist. The dentist is asking questions while Dark MDR watches and hits buttons. And the dentist is asking Gemma, how are you feeling today? She says, my mouth hurts. Well, yeah. Which room made your mouth hurt? This is part of a pattern we're going to find out. And she says, which room? And then he asks, how many rooms did you visit today? She says 6. That's the third 6 of the episode. I'm just saying.
Coincidence.
I hope so, because we have a full mark of the beast. I'm reaching on the 97.6.
A bit of a reach.
But I'm not backing off my this is all hell theory just yet. He asks, what happened in the rooms? She remembers nothing. How did you feel in the hallway? Did you exit any of the rooms feeling despair? And the dude looks way too happy when he says despair. Like, he almost looks giddy.
Not good.
Did you feel fervor? Gaiety? What?
Whoever, like, the training that Milchick had to go through about big words, we shouldn't be using those words, especially as she's being severed and unsevered in multiple ways.
She says there's only one room I haven't been to yet, and today it had a name on it. Cold Harbor. What happens once I've been in all the rooms? This seems like an important answer. The dentist very seriously says, you will see the world again, and the world will see you. What'd you make of that, Dan?
I have no idea. This is new. The idea that maybe none of it's real, and it's kind of projected memories. Yeah. So maybe that's a reference to you won't be stuck in severed existence.
This really brought me back to I thought a lot this episode of the Persephone, the allusion to Persephone that they made in like episode 2 of this season, which is a Greek mythological character who's married to the king of the underworld, and her mom is the goddess of the harvest. And so when he kind of kidnaps her, so it's not your up and up marriage,
like most Greek tragedies.
Yeah. But he kidnaps her, and her mom, being the goddess of the harvest, means that they were in perpetual winter. And so Zeus and the other big guns come to Hades, the king of the underworld, and say, hey, you can't do this. And so they make this agreement where she can come up for half the year, and her mom becomes happy, and we get spring and summer. It was a way for ancient Greek people, apparently, to explain the seasons. But I thought of this in this moment because you will see the world again, and the world will see you. This sort of explaining this duality that she has, and the severed nature of it all. So she's the queen of the underworld for 6 months of the year where she doesn't want to be and she's kept against her will. And then for 6 months of the year, she's out and happy, but she knows she has to go back. I don't know. I don't know how any of that fits in.
It definitely could be played up, especially if we're going with the Lumon Kier religion aspect. But I also wonder if they will try to present a story of, in her car accident, she had a traumatic brain injury, and it was because of our severed program that she is now a fully processing and functioning adult with her mind largely back intact.
Yeah, I've wondered several times, is this all happening in the mind of either Gemma or Mark? Did one of them have a serious mental break? And their brain has literally created all of this story in this world. I don't know. That would be kind of a cop-out, but I felt like it's possible. I saved the last line because I felt it needed to be talked about on their own. After he says, you will see the world again and the world will see you, she asks, so I'll see Mark. And then he says something very odd. Mark will benefit from the world you're siring. What do you guys think about that? That's wild.
Especially considering that her history of not being able to conceive and carry to full term. Yeah. That language, because she is aware of Mark, and so you presume she's aware of all the struggles they had when she was in the outside world, that would be hurtful. You're just kind of throwing that word or phrase out there willy-nilly. But I know that Lumon definitely has motives for whatever they're doing. She's just not aware of those motives.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so this last line almost feels like a throwaway compared to that one, because that one felt like, that's meaty. That means something. He says, Kier will take away all his pain, just as Kier has taken away yours. To which she adds, can you please just talk like a normal person? Yes. Yeah, that would be great.
If we go Revelation, it's the beast and the harlot.
Oh, there you go.
You're welcome.
You've come over to my way of thinking. We go back to Devin and Ragabi. Mark's out on the couch. Devin asks, is he okay? Ragabi says he's stable. He's journeying now, which is an interesting thing to say. Devin threatens to call Harmony Cobell.
That was a weird thing.
Yeah. To which Ragabi says she's Lumon through and through. She was raised by them. She's a soldier, which I thought was interesting. We haven't heard that language.
I'm here for it. Patricia Arquette strikes me as a soldier.
And Ragabi kind of says, hey, if this is your decision now, but if it's even a decision, I'm out. I got to bounce. And she leaves. But just as it appears Devin is going to make the call, Mark starts to mutter, Chikai Bardo. And it kicks into this memory we see of him and Gemma. And Gemma's got these cards that apparently she thinks she got put on a mailing list at the clinic. Clearly, Lumon sent her these cards.
Right.
How dare you, Lumon?
And it's some sort of activity. I'm not really clear on what she was doing. There's an activity to it because she's working on it. But she explains to Mark that Chikai Bardo, it's a guy fighting himself, defeating his own psyche. Ego death. Which it kind of fits in with the Kier and his twin brother story. Where remember, the frivolity of the twin brother is what does him in. This idea that he just doesn't want to do anything of structure. He just wants to be comfortable and do what he wants to do. And then you've got Kier, who thinks every moment should be some sort of work or process or progress. He's very capitalistic. And so the ego death was a very interesting term to use.
And these are all very mental health based things, which keep in mind, because as we wrap up the Gemma story, I have another thought.
Okay. Yeah, I immediately tried to place this into Freud's ego, superego, but it doesn't really fit.
Not the best.
Case. No. I tried to make it fit, but it didn't. But apparently in this memory, Gemma gets this activity card. It all gets interrupted by a couple under extreme duress. And we see them in the latter parts before she gets in her car accident, and they're sniping at each other. They're having these little kind of arguments, which, yeah, you get it. They're under immense pressure and stress.
Oh, the scene of him tearing apart the crib.
Yes.
Felt that. Oh, it hit like a ton of bricks.
Oh, man. The pain to go in the span of, 40 minutes from how they were, how playful they were and happy and joyful, to this place where they still love each other, but they are just absolutely beaten down, is just heartbreaking. We go into another Lumon room with Gemma. This time it's a crashing airplane. The dentist is there falling over and saying, it's okay, this is perfectly normal. And then he bounces up off the ceiling, and this is just another room she has to visit every day.
Yes.
Also, he brings her very terrible looking airplane food.
That was a nightmare in itself.
We hear the voice of the dentist while looking at a Cold Harbor screen. He's stuck at 96%, to which Drummond says, the nosebleed set us back. When he's done, you're going to have to say goodbye to her. Okay, which, again, we get the kind of full stop. This proves, hey, this guy has developed feelings for Gemma, which is just ick, just kind of creepy.
Mm-hmm.
But he clearly has some sort of affection for her. And then, to add insult to injury, Drummond says, why are you wearing that stupid sweater?
Loved it.
It's a Christmas sweater, and we find out because we go into another one of these hell rooms where Gemma is being forced to write eternal thank you cards after Christmas until her hands hurt.
Oh, poor Gemma.
Yeah, this is awful, dude.
So now that we've gone to this room, I will elaborate. I wonder if this is all within, let's say, Gemma's mind.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that Lumon just seems to be everywhere in each of these stops is just because she has been in a mental institution for a long time. If they're trying to do exposure therapy type things, but maybe artificially, like AI, virtual reality type, and that she feels like she's just reliving these moments over and over and over again, and that she can't really escape. But this is still the way Lumon we're viewing it is a construct of her mind.
Yeah.
Because each one of these things are a fear or something that causes extreme pain, and something that a lot of people get high anxiety, high stress, high depression over. And if you can use exposure therapy to make it not as intense, make it closer to it's just a normal day in the neighborhood, then you're back to being able to function day in, day out better.
Yeah. That sort of fits with the remaining conversation, because she says, how long do I have to do this? And he says, I told you you're done, but Christmas has a funny way of coming back around each year.
It does.
And she says, it's always Christmas, which I've never heard in that particular tone. I mean, always Christmas sounds delightful.
So it's kind of funny that this show has Adam Scott and she just said that line, because in Krampus, he is stuck in a perpetual hell Christmas.
Oh,
wow.
That every time, so eventually he gets stuck in a snow globe is how the movie ends.
Oh my gosh.
And
spoilers.
Yeah, it's only been out for probably 10 years, but Literally, they live through this nightmare of Krampus killing them off one by one over and over again.
Oh, that's
and
terrible.
It's just this bleak, dark Christmas over and over and over again.
I probably was not going to watch Krampus. So it's hard. And then in the creepiness part, he won't let her leave the room until she returns his "I love you," which in this case she gives a very snarky "I love you too." Then we go to more sad memories. They're just kind of interspersing them at this point. Then the dentist, who she refers to this time as Dr. Maurer, pays a visit to her room. "How are you feeling?" "My hand hurts." "What room caused your hand to hurt?" And finally, through these normal questions that she apparently gets all the time, she's reached a breaking point. She says, "I want to go home." Then Dr. Maurer lies, which is another interesting breaking of the pattern, right? "Your husband remarried last year. He has a daughter now." She says, "I don't believe you." "You've been gone a long time, Gemma. He's moved on. Maybe you've moved on too in one of the rooms. What do you think? Have you fallen for someone in one of your eternal pain rooms?"
Surely it's the dentist.
I mean, maybe there's a guy there in the midst of all your suffering who you've fallen for. This dude in his gaslighting. As he continues to gaslight, Gemma hits him in the head with a chair, which might have been the most satisfying part of the episode.
Very WWE-esque.
Her escape attempt is on. We go to more sad memories. We've seen the entirety of their courtship now and marriage up to Gemma's apparent car crash and death. Her escape, of course, is hopeless. As she goes up to the elevator and exits, she's moved into another portion of her severed consciousness, one that is probably Miss Casey, who has no idea what's going on.
Yep.
Mr. Milchick is there.
They paged him quickly.
Yeah.
He's out of breath.
He's out of breath, yeah. And he sends her back down because eternal separation and torment awaits. We're not outrunning the hell imagery this episode. Cut to Audi Mark waking up. Devin says, "Oh, Mark, where did you go?" And he is overcome with sadness. But that is an important line because that's the one we started the episode
Yes,
with.
it is. Which the last memory he has before the police show up to the door is her saying, "I love you," and then saying, "I said," and he's like, "Oh, I love you too, honey. I'm sorry."
Yeah, which is an interesting play on what we just saw with the dentist.
Yes, and that's his last Audi memory with Gemma is that.
Is it troubling at all that it does mirror the interaction with the dentist? Is it troubling that maybe she has a brain injury and all of this is in her mind? And that the dentist is actually Mark?
Oh, that would be awful.
Okay, all right. Granted, we don't want that.
No.
I'm just a little concerned with the parallel of
There's
that
so many
conversation.
parallels in this show.
So the other thing is, if all these homes are Lumon homes, and like all the services they have, like internet, phone, are Lumon services, are they constantly listening in and
Good point.
earmarking? These are vital moments.
Let's go with that. Let's go with the one where we still get to have a bad guy.
Yeah.
Anything else we want to say about the episode? And
That scene where they're going through the wiring, that's not CGI. They actually did
Wow.
They broke it down on how they did it, but they went with like a special camera and went through the wiring and the floor, and like it was epic.
That's wild.
Not CGI. And this is this director's first episode directing.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
She's usually the cinematographer, I think.
Well, that makes sense.
And so this is her first time ever directing, and they interviewed her, and she said that the thing that she learned is she wants to keep doing this.
Yeah. This episode was gorgeous from that standpoint. Yeah. Cinematography, the feeling of it, even though it leaves us in the bad feels, just the strong emotion that runs throughout this episode is just done so well. Dan, anything else before we go to our categories?
I was just blown away by this episode. They pulled out all the stops.
Yeah.
They did. And so something that I'll piggyback on something I said earlier about like how they might be doing kind of exposure therapy. And I didn't realize this until someone mentioned it in one of the threads I was reading. But in past episodes, the innies hear in the break room distressing sounds or sounds that are distressing for their outies. For Dylan, it's children crying. For Helena, it's an angry male's voice, which could be her father's voice.
Yeah.
And so if
I bet Gemma's is a dental drill.
potentially, or the sound of writing thank yous.
Which I
my
noticed
goodness.
she's writing with her left hand, and the handwriting is terrible.
Oh, it's horrific.
But when she's filling out the form, she's writing with her right hand,
And
So wait, they're making her do it left-handed?
which is more torture.
That is, first of all, nice.
Way to
nice
go,
detail
Dan.
to pick up. I'm about to go back and watch that now. Oh my goodness, terrible. These people are terrible.
They are.
the worst.
Dan, who's the winner of the episode?
Winner of the episode. I think Rickon for
Yeah.
climbing like a gecko. I mean that's awesome to find out
For a
that this guy's
dude-
like as spry as
Yeah, for a dude with his body style,
That's
I
incredible.
did not expect to hear that.
yeah.
Good for him.
Well done, Rickon.
Yeah, well done. Cody, who's your winner of the episode?
It is Deishan, a.k.a. Gemma.
Yeah, the actress?
Yes.
She's awesome in this episode.
Incredible.
So she was on a show that was also kind of weird and did some trippy things. Altered Carbon.
Oh,
And
yeah.
she was phenomenal in it. And everything that I've seen her in, she does a terrific job. And for this whole season, I'm like, are we not going to have her at all? And then finally, she's back.
She has a very interesting look, too. She's beautiful.
Very distinct.
Yeah,
Yep.
but very distinct. And so she's great for these kind of shows, I think, because she just adds to that. With her look, it adds to this like mysterious kind of lady.
Yes. My backup, though, and I know we're not supposed to have backups, but it will be Jessica Lee Gagne for her directorial debut.
That's a good pick. That's a good pick, too. I did not get that deep. I just went with Outie Mark because I'm choosing to believe that he somehow got all that information. I am choosing to believe that he saw all that, and including Gemma in Lumon.
Oh wow.
So I'm going to say Outie Mark because I think we now have a Mark who is aware of a lot more that's going on because of the reintegration. So I don't know how they're going to explain that or if that's even the case, but I'm choosing to believe that because I want to have hope that he's going to win before the end of this season.
Absolutely. Yes.
Who's the loser of the episode, Dan?
Gemma. Just watching her.
I don't know
go
how you
back
could pick anyone else.
down the elevator and just realize, oh no, I can't escape. That's the worst.
Do they put her tooth back in and pull it each time? What's happening there?
Didn't
And
think
why
about
does that guy like Gordon Lightfoot so much?
Cody, who's your loser of the episode? If there's someone different.
I think it has to be Devin.
Oh, man, she gets put through the ringer.
She gets put through the ringer. She finds out that her brother had this very risky procedure done without her knowledge of it. She sees the person that can help him just walk out the door because she thinks, oh, I need to call the old boss from Lumon. And then she is left with the pieces of Mark and him starting to cry as he wakes up.
Yeah, and she has no control.
Yeah.
So he's already done the procedure. Now she just has to sit and wait. She does get convinced enough to not call Harmony Cobell, which is good. Or at least Mark wakes up at the right time.
I mean, I have been missing Patricia Arquette. I'm not going to lie.
How many thank you cards are you writing out of 10 for this one, Dan?
I'll give this one a solid 9 at least.
Mm.
It was good.
I'll go 9.5.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a 9 too. It's not the kind of episode you super want to rewatch.
Right.
Nope.
Because it's super heavy. It's super sad. There's a lot of suffering in this episode. But I feel like I'm excited for the next episode.
Starting to get somewhere.
Because, yeah, we know so much more now than we did at the beginning. And so, yeah, this was a great episode. And again, can't give enough props to the first-time director. Wow. It's a good one. So,
it is.
What do you think? Is it hell? Is it all the imagery there? Do you agree with my Kierspiracy?
Is it love?
Is it? Whoa.
They're just trying to make the world a better place.
Is love hell? No. Whatever. I don't know what Hollywood people be trying to say. Literally, this story could go any direction, and I don't feel like I'd be shocked.
Right.
Except I will fully be shocked, and how dare I not get this?
Actually, I would be. They're all in a church. They were dead all along. That would shock me, and I'd be pretty upset. But, yep. We'll see you next week, everybody.